Hello, how are you?
Hi, Doug
Hello.
and Abdul. How are you?
Good, good.
Good to see you and great to be here with you.
Thank you.
So we're just going to talk a little bit about your history and your experience in music in Buffalo. For you, Greg, I'd love to know how you got started in your early stages.
Well, initially I really wanted to be a sax player. Because I used to see a lot of old vinyl album covers. Sax players, you know, they have shiny saxophones and they look nice and they're in these poses. So I said, yeah, well, I think I might like to do that. A friend of the family convinced my mother that I should take up the clarinet before the saxophone. And I can truthfully say that the clarinet is the reason why I'm not a sax player to this day. Because the clarinet was like so difficult. And then later on, when I eventually said, well, that's not going to work, I saw more album covers with guitar players on them. So I said, well, that looks kind of nice too, you know. So then I went out and had my parents buy me a pawn shop guitar, which, you know, wasn't in very good shape. They kind of realized that they knew I was going to be serious because when I would practice, I'd have to wear a glove on this hand because the strings were so high. So they said, well, maybe we better get him a better guitar. So they did, you know, and that was around, I'd say around 1963. And I guess you can say that the rest is history from that point on. You know, I studied diligently, I guess, for about 5 years, and then the Army interrupted me a little bit, you know, where I didn't play a lot. And then when I got out of the service, I resumed my career as best I could. So.
Who were some of your teachers?
Originally, here in Buffalo, there was a music store on Main Street, Wurlitzer Music. I signed up for lessons there, and there were actually a couple of teachers. The first guy, I think his name was like Bernard Perry. His thing was more into, not so much jazz, but he was like more into like, kind of like ethnic music, but it was a little bit more German-based or European-based. So he taught me what he could, and then he left there, and another Italian man came along named Jim Primerano, and he focused me a little bit more on jazz. Then I believe the store closed down, and then I went to another music store run by this guy named Art Kubera, which I'm sure everybody knows of Art, and that's where I met the most intense teacher I had. His name was Jim Kipler, and he showed me a lot about jazz, you know, a lot of guitar stuff. And you know, I've seen him in the last few years. You know, he's still around, and I always thank him for what he gave to me. You know, which was a good foundation, and you know, I carried on from there as best I could. You know.
Wow, that's wonderful. How about you, Doug? Trigger?
Yeah, I started also at 4 years old at the Wurlitzer Music Store on Main Street. My mother took me there, and I had one lesson. And the teacher said, he's got no talent. He does not have what it takes to play music. He does not have the essentials to play music. I don't know what the problem was. And from there, I studied with, I've got to think, it's been so many teachers. There was, Al Jarrett. I studied with Al Jarrett, the great Al Jarrett. Then I studied with Mrs. Elette Dixon. She was the grande dame of East Side piano teachers. Okay, and that was on piano. And then I had an organ teacher, Dorothy Graney. After that, she introduced me to the organ. Also had another very important organ teacher. It wasn't formal organ teacher, but we did informal lessons at my house. I would help him with some aspects of music, and he would help me play the jazz, and that was Mr. Ronnie Foster, the great Ronnie Foster. Okay? And then, but on classical piano, which is what I mainly did, then I studied with, his name was Ronald Peters. He was the artist teacher at Ville Maria at that time. Then at the University of Buffalo, I studied with Stephen Manners and the great Leo Smith. So those are my teachers, and I'm sure there's others in there. There were so many.
Right.
And also my students. They're my teachers also. Because if you teach, you learn from your students.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So Abdul, you want to give me some insights on how you got into the drums?
Oh, yes. Well, I was an infant also. Actually, I can remember like pulling out pots and pans when I was a baby and playing at my mother's feet. I remember vividly. Just almost had rhythm for playing drums. But I basically started, we were doing a gig, it was a gig at the Port East, which is here in Buffalo. And I was playing percussion at the time. And all the Buffalo heavyweights were there. Greg Millar, James Clark, Bilal Abdullah, everybody. So the drummer had kind of disappeared. So Sabu was playing bass, Sabu Adio. I said, I play drums, and I guess pretty much from there, the rest was history. And been fortunate to be playing with a lot of the musicians here in Buffalo. These are my teachers. And coming here, studying with great Maurice Sinclair, Nassar Abiday, I used to follow, with his shadow, to follow him everywhere. And all of the drummers during that time, Nasir, Harry Pender, so many is an array, And I'm like that too, and also from the students that I'm currently teaching. Those are my teachers. Present.
So, out of the three of you, all of you have played with many musicians. And there are a lot here on the wall.
Yeah.
Have you played with anybody
Mm-hmm.
on the wall? Greg?
Myself, I've done a couple gigs with Kenny Green and Dodo Green. I think Sabu was somewhere on the wall, and I've worked with Lou Hackney before too. I was pretty young at that time, and I was fortunate, because my father used to bring me here all the time when downstairs was the Musicians Union and their offices, and the club was still upstairs. So he would bring me, and kind of, he was a little bit boisterous, he said, oh yeah, this is my son, he's playing guitar, blah, 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 let him do his thing, so he introduced me to all the older musicians, a lot of them you see on the wall here. And, they kind of respected what I was trying to do, and naturally I respected them because they were the elders. And, they gave me some opportunities. As a matter of fact, I was telling the guys that one of the first gigs I had when I joined the union here was with piano player Les Davis. Les is still active today, and, all those influences, culminated in, how I, developed as a musician, and I'm very thankful for all that has happened to me all those years, I've had interruptions, and, times when the frustration would build up, you say, oh, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, and I've gone through that, I've sold my equipment and I've had to buy new stuff, and, the encouragement was like, okay, well, man, you got enough talent, you shouldn't stop playing, and I was like, well, okay, maybe you're right, so I picked it up again and, still continue to this day,
So, what is it like when you're playing with musicians like this? Like, do you recall a feeling that you might have had, or?
Well, you're a little intimidated, you're a little nervous, but, like the way they were, they kind of made you feel secure enough. They weren't, like just pressuring you over and over to, like, well, you're not doing this right or you're not doing this right. But in their own way, they were kind of telling you the same things, but just, by showing you, well, hey, like you should be trying this or you should be trying this. And, as a young musician, you're always open to all of that. You want to hear that. You want to hear the encouragement. You want to know your flaws even, So, it's like a learning situation,
Right. How about you, Doug? Have you played with anybody here?
Well, the first one I'm looking at here is Dodo Green. I played with her for a couple decades at the Anchor Bar.
Right. She's the first woman on the Blue Note label?
Yes, and She was something else, and I looked around. Eggy Riding, I played with him in church. We belonged to the same church. And lots of these guys, because I was first brought down here, I was about 8 or 10. Our upstairs neighbor was a singer of renown at that time, Mr. Prince Moss. And he would bring me down to the club here to play when I was about 8 or so.
Wow.
And so yeah, I've been playing with the guys from that time, because I would play with men from about that time in bars. Well, in bars from when I was 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so I played with all these guys, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, Abdul, how did the club impact you as a musician?
The club here, oh man, this
Yes.
was, actually this was it was a start. It was another start as far as playing with big band, trio quartet settings. A lot of these on the wall here, these walls could talk, well. Alvin Shepard, Roll,
Alvin, yeah.
Al Tinney, Dodo. Oh, Dizzy. I played percussion with Dizzy for
Wow, what was that
stint.
like?
Yeah, which was really cool. And it was. I still reflect back on those times. You know, it's still school for me when I reflect. It's still, you know, these gentlemen right here are just as well. You know, about 40 years, 45 years. Did I say that?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
45, 50 years.
Yes.
You know, so we go back. Yeah, I've always been the baby too.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, oddly enough, I run across a cassette tape that I had done. It was like a 42-year-old tape, and Abdul was part of the group at that time. And man, listening to that music as we were playing, we were all featured with another guitarist named James Clark, who was very prominent here in town. And James came up with all these great tunes, and you know, we tried to play them. And listening back to that tape, it was like, wow, I don't know how in the world I did that stuff, man. But you know, 42 years ago, I guess, you know, we were kind of in our prime back then, you know.
Yeah,
Right. So,
still in our prime.
Yeah, we're still trying
That's
to,
right.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Charles Early.
Charles was a great guy. You know, he was a wonderful gentleman. And the reason, I think the first time that I worked with him, there was another club here called the Revelot Lounge, and the owner was a gentleman by the name of BMO Crockett. I used to kind of frequent the club to see other acts when they would come in town, you know, big name people. And I forget who was in town at the time, but it was somebody I went to see at the Revelot. And BMO pulled me to the side and he said, hey Greg, I think Charles Erling is looking for you. I didn't know Charles from Adam, you know. And it was like, okay, well, he gave me his number and I called Charles, and I think Charles kind of remembered me, you know, from when we, you know, like to do sessions on Sundays at the Pine Grill and stuff. But I wasn't the guy he was looking for. You know, I found that out later on. But he said, well, come on and, you know, take this road trip with me.
Wow.
You know, so I went to his home in New Jersey, and he was putting together a sextet with 3 horns, guitar, organ, and drums. So we all had to, you know, like kind of stay in the area, rehearse a little bit. And, you know, things worked out really nice. I went on the road with him for maybe about a year. And eventually, you know, I had a chance to record with him too, you know.
Which album? Are you on all of his albums or just are you
No,
on Intensity?
yeah, and then I think the recording session itself got split into 2 separate albums.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the name of the other one, but I think on the other one there's only maybe like one other tune
Mm-hmm.
that I was featured on. I mean, it was a great session. I mean, I met some of the great cats in the jazz business: Hubert Laws, Billy Harper, Billy Cobham, Virgil Jones, you know, like all these great players, and they were all, you know, very open, you know, but I was like a young guy. I was like nervous, you know, they made me nervous. You know, I'm like, Billy Cobham, oh my God, man. You know, but I mean, you know, I got through the session okay, and you know, we got paid well, and just went back on the road after that. You know.
Wow. Okay. So, excuse me, Douglas, you mentioned piano and organ. How did you move from piano to organ?
Well, the reason that I wanted to get into organ because I had played piano around different rhythm and blues gigs, jazz gigs, and it was always hard to hear the piano. Okay, you had to pound on the thing so hard because back in those days there were pianos like the one on the stage, you know, upright pianos, not always in the best condition, and it was frustrating. And then I heard the organ, and the organ could cut through. Then I heard Jimmy Smith too. That lit it alive. But also I mentioned that I studied with the great Elet Dixon. Okay, and at that time all the students played in church also, and everybody played piano and organ. So it was a natural transition to play the organ.
Mm-hmm.
So then I studied the organ, you know, with teachers also.
Wow. So you played with so many great people, from Frank Foster and Clifford Jordan and Marcellus.
Mhm.
How did you get hired? How did they find you? How were you hired to do this?
I am not sure. I am really not sure. Just word of mouth, I would get a call.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
With the Marcellus gig, we played with Branford together, and that was when we were playing at the Calumet. Okay, when it first opened up, when Chippewa first turned around.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when we started there, Chippewa was like the old Chippewa, the days of old, you know, the illicit Chippewa, and it turned around on that
Yes.
on that job. That's when it turned into Chippewa that we know now.
Clean up.
Yeah, and so that we hired a lot of those people
Yeah.
to come and play with Clifford Jordan. We hired them to come in and play with us.
Abdul, who are some of the bands that you've played with around Buffalo over the years?
Man.
I mean, there are a lot of bands in Buffalo, a lot of musicians
Wow.
in Buffalo, but who are some of the?
Well, I don't. Oh man, it's Greg Millar, Douglas Trigger Gaston, Bilal Abdullah, Sabu Adiola, Walter Kemp, Will Holden, man,
So you
Jim
played
Beislein,
a full
Tony
range.
Gallo. Oh man,
It's like a who's who.
man. The list goes on. And it's numerous groups. Grover, like and Shep up here too. Yes, great times.
Okay. So I'm gonna bring up a name. The name is Lee Morgan.
Yeah, sideline.
Yeah, that. How did you meet Lee Morgan? How did you start playing with Lee Morgan? I
well-
mean, you played with him 3
Well,
days
I-
before
I-
he passed, right?
Yeah, I played. Well, that was all through Charles Erland. I think we had a gig at this club in Harlem called the Baron. I think that was on like 132nd Street or something like that. And Charles's band was working, and Lee Morgan came in to hear the group. And you know, he was like such a great person. You know, I mean, he had like such great things to say about us young players. You know, that it was like, oh wow, you got to kind of take that in and run with it. You know, so I think at that particular time, Charles might have convinced him to do his recording session, which was, you know, maybe a couple months later. And then, you know, shortly thereafter, when we did the session, Lee had, his group was playing at a club called Slugs on the Lower East Side, and that's where he died, you know, being killed. And it was really like a sad situation, you know. There was, I guess there was like circumstances that might have been leading up to that, but you know, I won't get into that. You know, it's like, you know, things happen. You know, and it was really sad to see I was glad to see that they came out with the documentary called "I Called Him Morgan," which is really a good tribute to him too. You know, he was just a wonderful musician and a great person.
Yeah, the documentary's done well. I did see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you know Helen? Did you ever meet Helen as well?
No, I didn't. No.
Lots more questions. Let's see. Doug. Oh, we talked about Dodo. So, what kind of music what are you playing now?
Now, jazz.
Jazz.
Jazz, and also a lot of my compositions,
Right.
because that's what I've been a composer, a tunesmith, composer. I don't know.
Well, composer. You
Well,
know,
well,
as a
some.
composer. Or
Well, yeah,
performer.
but mainly a tunesmith. That's been my thing since I was a young child. I would always make up tunes, first in my head, and then to varying degrees of well, sometimes better than others. Now I hope better. But yeah, this is something I've always done since a pre-10-year-old. I've always had. I would have operas. I've done operas. And even when I was a kid, I had operas. And what I thought was an opera, they weren't fully fleshed out. Then later on, I've done, full operas. But even as a kid, and that was an escape, because I couldn't. I had a speech impediment and couldn't speak, and so I lived through the music, and I made up the stories and everything.
Composer.
Yeah, that's what I still do. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Abdul, you played with Marcellus, right? You guys played together with Marcellus.
Yes,
You
we
played
did.
with is it Delfeo or
Definitely.
right? What was it like to tour with him and work with him?
Man, actually, we played a couple times here with them, and it was great. We played some of his tunes, and we played some of the great tunes from the standards under the standard book. We had a great time, Every night we played, full house, which also led to other things, that we also did also.
Mm-hmm.
Which was cool.
So you've all played together before, all three?
Oh yeah.
Lots.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I wouldn't say it was a lot, but we've done quite a bit,
Any fondest memory or
Uh,
funniest memory of playing
well,
together?
I would say the fondest was what we just finished doing.
Ah.
As part of this, that's how I would look at it. It's like I couldn't ask for more as far as like better accompaniment. Great friends. Great people. It's all part of a great situation.
Yeah, we first played together with Birthright.
Right.
That's when I
That's
first met
right.
you.
Yeah, that's true.
And with
Yeah.
Birthright, I remember was playing in because John McLaughlin was really big at the time.
Yeah.
Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Right.
I remember this guy's better than John McLaughlin. Wait a minute. I couldn't believe
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah.
That was really a great band too. I don't know if you're familiar with that band at all, but Paul Gresham and Joe Ford and Nasser Abadeh, they were the nucleus of the group, and they recorded. I don't know if you recorded the first album with. No, I think it was J-Man.
Yeah.
And once they saw some success that they were having, they recorded a second album, and I was fortunate to do that one with them. And they were really a group that were way ahead of their time, because they were doing like really, not necessarily experimental things, but like really stretching the boundaries of jazz at that time, because they were all great players. And, I kind of felt really lucky, and I had to step my game up to, even be a part of any of that,
I want to ask, I know all of you touched on it, the club. And what is like the most impactful thing you would say that the club had on your career, your life,
Well,
your friendships? Like what was the
I
biggest?
could start that off because okay, my father and his brother, my uncle, were frequent people that came to the club. My uncle was quite a character. I didn't see this, but rumor has it that he was upstairs with everybody at the bar. He jumped up on the bar, walked down the bar, and kicked everybody's drink off the bar. And when he finished, he jumped back down and bought everybody another drink. Now, like I say, I never saw that, but knowing who he was, that was probably like a real true story, because that was the kind of character he was, you know.
Wow.
And, you know, like I said, my father would bring me up here to, you know, introduce me to all the musicians, and, you know, that was kind of like my end, I guess, you know.
So this was the spot, this place.
Yeah, yeah.
How about you?
For me, it was a place that I became indoctrinated into the culture of music and that old jazz culture. As I said, Prince Moss brought me here as a sub 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And more than the music that I remember, it was the style of the musicians, you know, their swagger, their attitude, and being a musician. More than the music, because when I played, there was not the instruments up there that you see now. There was old beat-up piano, and it wasn't much fun to play on. So I really didn't like coming to play because the instrument was so bad. But it was the hanging out with the musicians and adopting their style, again, the swagger. Mm-hmm. And for a little kid trying to be cool, trying to but I thought I was, because I was brought in, and then I played with some of the guys on jobs and got paid. So I thought that I was in too, you know. Right. And they would be around, and there would be fancy women around. I said, well, gee, I should get a fancy woman. So I'm a little kid. So I'm approaching these women. Hey, baby. And then when my son was that age, I said, oh my God, what was I doing? But I could play a little blues at the time, so I thought I was in. So I should be in, you know. And they would smoke and drink. I didn't smoke and drink, but I thought I was grown too, like them. I thought I was a musician. Yeah, so.
You were budding, so.
Well, yeah, and it was here, up these stairs, up those long stairs, those steep stairs, and coming. And then in Prince I've had pictures in the attic that after he died, he left up there. He's sitting at the bar, and he and Nat King Cole, they're sitting at, and this was at Dan Montgomery's, back which used to be a place down by the train station. All the big people would be there. And they would be hanging out, and then hanging out the drinks and the cigarette out the side. And so, yeah, that was a style that I tried to assume. I'm a jazz man. Yeah, so that's what that meant here.
Right.
To me, who would know that all these years later, I would still be coming here.
Still a jazz man.
Well, I'm still trying to be.
You don't have the cigarette hanging.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, wow.
Club and impact.
Well, actually, this is as far as the jazz and swinging, this is where I got my start. I'll never forget, like 16 years old. Bassist was playing with Birthright at the time, which was Jerry Eastman. He had a big band. So he invited me to come up and play. So I came up and played, you know, big band instruments. And that's what I was saying, great drummer Maurice Sinclair was there. And so we got finished, you know. He called me up. He said, young man, come over here. So, you know, I'm a little kid. I'm going over. And he sat down right at the table, and he just started playing some single stroke. And he started playing double strokes. He said, learn those. He said, learn those with what you're doing. And that's what I did. And I was like I stayed working after that from different groups from up at the club. And that's one of the things that I'm always thankful about the club here.
Mm-hmm.
And to be, and like Doug said, to come back and to be back in the midst of this again is a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a jazz musician, but everything is kind of improv. It's on the spot. You're in the middle of the song. You're ready to play it, and then all of a sudden, there's this thing that happens. How do you make that work?
Well, it's a studying process. I mean, you know, you have to, you know, put in time, you know, theoretical time, you know, technical time. You know, hopefully you know, you become influenced by your peers or the people that went on before you. You know, all those influences. I mean, that's what's gotten me to this point. You know, I mean, even, you know, I always say that even people that are younger than me can influence me as much as some of the elders did, you know, because I'm always open for learning, you know. You really never stop learning, you know. There's always going to be something out there that you might not know. Somebody else knows it, you know, and if you're, you know, maybe humble enough or they're humble enough, you say, hey, man, well, how did you do that, you know, and they'll share that information. I feel that way myself, you know. I'll share whatever information I know with whoever, you know. I don't, you know, become restrictive in that sense, you know, like it's stuff that's out there that can be learned. You know?
Well, thank you guys. This was quite interesting. I wish we could keep talking more. I want to hear more deep stories. Like this was a corridor, right? The little Harlem was just over here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There were a lot of different clubs in Buffalo. Just so much rich history and connection with the club and everything that you've done. But thank you for sharing your stories.
Well, thank you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Yes.